In the heart of the Middle East, a storm is gathering. Israel and the militant faction HTS are on the brink of a landmark deal. Iran is sounding alarms at the United Nations, and in southern Syria, Sweida burns with new violence. Diplomacy, airstrikes, and deepening fault lines. Tonight, we unravel the battle for Syria's future, where every move could redraw the map. The political landscape in Syria is set to undergo another dramatic shift this September. According to reports from independent Arabia, the Israeli government and the militant faction Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, or the HTS, are preparing to sign a so-called security agreement on September 25th. The deal, brokered under US mediation, is being portrayed publicly as an effort to reduce tensions, though regional sources caution that it is far from a comprehensive peace arrangement. The timing is particularly striking. Just one day before the planned signing, HTS leader Al-Sharaa is scheduled to make his first appearance at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Washington, meanwhile, is pushing hard for a symbolic meeting between Sharaa and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, with US President Donald Trump also expected to attend. Parallel to these developments, diplomatic back channels have been busy. This past week in Paris, Asad al-Shibani, Syria's acting foreign minister, held discreet talks with an Israeli delegation led by Ron Dermer, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs. The discussions reportedly focused on de-escalating tensions, particularly in Sweida province in southern Syria. That area, home to a large Druze population, has witnessed growing instability and repeated Israeli strikes in recent months. According to Sky News Arabia, the dialogue showed signs of progress, even as Israel continued to escalate its military footprint inside Syria. Since the collapse of former President Bashar al-Assad's government last year, Israel has intensified both its aerial assaults and ground operations across Syrian territory. Prime Minister Netanyahu has given explicit instructions to his forces to push deeper into the country, securing key strategic positions. Significantly, HTS has remained silent in the face of these operations. Analysts argue that its willingness to engage in normalization talks with Israel, coupled with its lack of resistance to repeated bombardments, has effectively provided Tel Aviv with greater latitude to expand its strikes and entrench its presence on Syrian soil. Against this backdrop, Iran has taken a sharply critical stance, condemning Israel's actions in Syria as a flagrant breach of international law. Addressing the United Nations Security Council during a session on Syria, Ambassador Amir Said Iravani, Iran's permanent representative to the UN, delivered an unambiguous warning.
The Security Council should not ignore the ongoing destabilizing actions of the Israeli regime in Syria.
He further accused Israel of deliberately escalating tensions across the region.
Israel's repeated strikes have caused civilian casualties, destroyed vital infrastructure, and heightened regional tensions.
At the same time, the Iranian envoy drew attention to the continued presence of ISIS and al-Qaeda cells across Syria, warning that these groups still represented a serious threat to regional and international security. Iravani reaffirmed that the only viable path forward remained a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned political process, one that could preserve the unity, independence, and territorial integrity of the Syrian state. While international diplomacy circles around high-level agreements and condemnations, conditions on the ground in Syria remain dangerously volatile. The southern city of Sweida, which erupted in deadly clashes last month, has become a flashpoint in the ongoing crisis. Briefing the UN Security Council, Geir Pedersen, the UN's special envoy for Syria, painted a sobering picture of the situation.
The threat of renewed conflict is ever present, as are the political centrifugal forces that threaten Syria's sovereignty, unity, independence, and territorial integrity.
Pedersen described Syria's overall transition as on a knife edge, noting that violence could reignite at any moment despite the fragile ceasefire currently holding in Sweida. The country has been navigating a precarious political path since the ouster of Bashar al-Assad in December, which marked the end of the Assad family's decades-long rule. Though the removal of Assad initially raised hopes of national reconciliation, the reality has proven far more complex. Tensions have been amplified by ethnic and sectarian divides, particularly between Druze militias and local Sunni Bedouin tribes. On July 13th, clashes between these two groups escalated into widespread fighting. Government forces attempted to intervene, but were widely perceived to have sided with the Bedouins. This dynamic prompted direct Israeli military intervention. In a highly charged move, Israel launched dozens of airstrikes targeting government convoys advancing towards Sweida. Publicly, Tel Aviv framed its strikes as the defense of Syria's Druze minority, but analysts say the decision reflected wider strategic goals, namely securing a foothold in southern Syria under the guise of humanitarian protection. The violence in Sweida is just the latest example of the broader instability now threatening Syria's fragile post-Assad transition. Ethnic mistrust, external interference, and a power vacuum left by the fallen regime have combined to create conditions ripe for escalation. As the country moves toward a possible normalization pact between Israel and HTS, questions remain about who truly benefits. For many Syrians, the humanitarian cost continues to mount, even as international powers maneuver for influence over what remains of the Syrian state. Taken together, the proposed Israel-HTS security agreement, Iran's vocal denunciations at the UN, and the deteriorating situation in Sweida highlight the layered volatility of Syria's present moment. Israel appears intent on consolidating its military reach inside Syrian territory, leveraging localized conflicts and fragile opposition factions like HTS to expand its strategic influence. Iran, on the other hand, is doubling down on its defense of Syrian sovereignty, positioning itself as the principal backer of national unity and resistance to foreign occupation. Meanwhile, the UN warns that Syria's fragile transition could unravel with little warning, particularly in multi-ethnic regions where mistrust is running high. As September approaches, with Al-Sharaa''s UN appearance and the looming security agreement signing date, the next phase of Syria's struggle looks set to unfold on both diplomatic front lines and the battlefield. The stakes could not be higher for the future sovereignty and survival of the Syrian state.